If you found this topic helpful, I think you will love my self-study course, The Trauma Recovery Method, Discovering Resilience, Reconnection, and Healing Through Mindfulness. I hope you choose to join me. The link is in the description below. Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about the symptoms of trauma. There are so many different symptoms of trauma, and it affects us in so many different ways depending on who we are. As we've spoken about before, trauma exposure leads to lifelong increases of heart and brain reactivity, cortisol, adrenaline, and other stress responses. We know that trauma changes the brain structure. It also changes the hormonal, immune system, nervous, and endocrine systems. But the good news is we also have a thing called neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the ability for our brain and our body to relearn and recreate new pathways in our brain and our body systems that are more conducive to healing. And trauma gives us a language to express that we have always realized that there's been something wrong or something that we'd like to be better at, but we might have been unable to explain why we felt the way that we felt. So when we think about the symptoms of trauma, when we think about our mind, this often comes as a re-experiencing negative cognitions, low or high moods, numbness, loss of interest, a sense of anger, blame, forgetting things, and it can really affect our mind in so many ways. When we looked at the symptoms in the way that they show up in our body, this can express itself as a multitude of diseases such as diabetes, cancer, and autoimmune conditions, but also comes with many things like headaches and stomach aches and pains, and this hyperarousal and avoidance of different things. We also almost contract in these moments in our body when we're feeling that trauma. Emotionally, these ones are a bit more obvious. They're what we'd expect, right? So trauma, of course, affects things like anxiety and panic, the sense that we're feeling overwhelmed or frustrated, the ways that we express anger, the ways that we express sadness or guilt, and the many myriad of emotions that we have. And one of the things we don't often talk about emotions is that we can feel multiple emotions at the same time. So it's possible to feel happiness and anxiety at the same time. It's possible to feel guilt and relief at the same time. It's not so black and white as just feeling one or the other. And this is what gets confusing when we're thinking about trauma, because often we can have conflicting emotions happening at the same time. It often shows up in our lives in the ways in our thoughts too. So in the rumination and worry, the negative self-talk that we use on ourselves, and this then affects our social lives as well. So we might feel then that we want to isolate or withdraw or avoid people because we don't want them to see us not at our best. Or it might mean that we stay so busy that we're never allowing any time to sit in our own thoughts. It can also show up as a multitude of behaviors, such as perfectionism and people-pleasing, substance abuse of every kind. So when I say substance use, I'm not just talking about drugs and alcohol. I'm talking also about food and chocolate, television, media, all the things that we get addicted to when we're feeling traumatized and overwhelmed. And that it also affects us in an existential, energetic, sort of spiritual way. And that shows up often as exhaustion, dissociation, and having this sense that we have a lack of purpose or a lack of meaning, that we're not sure what we want out of life anymore. We're not sure who we are. We're not sure if people are going to accept us. And I like to think about the symptoms of trauma as being kind of like a series of switches. So each event in our life turns on a switch. And when we flipped enough switches on, then the trauma shows up in our lives. And it can show up in any of these ways. Substance use, diabetes, anxiety, depression, anything that you're coping with. And you might be wondering, why was I okay up until a certain point and then I wasn't okay again? It's because enough stressors have got flipped on that suddenly we've overwhelmed the circuits. And then the body, the mind, the soul, the spirit, the thoughts and behaviors all start to express themselves in this trauma response. So trauma really is a rich tapestry of symptoms. And much like a detective, we have to go in and start to search and connect the pieces between things we've had happen in our childhood, in our adult life, things that maybe seem connected and maybe are or maybe aren't. We have to go in and really look at how these things have come to be. Things just don't happen overnight. But I really encourage you to do some of that detective work, to really reflect on your past, the messages we get from society, the messages we've gotten from our families of origin, the stories that we've told about ourselves that have all culminated to a place where we're not comfortable anymore. So I'd really encourage you to do that investigation, that self-reflection, and take breaks when needed as well, because it can be incredibly overwhelming as also to look at that whole trauma story and see how it fits together. I thank you so much for spending your time with me. I truly appreciate it. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe. And if you have any requests for future topics you'd like to cover in an upcoming video, just leave them in the comments below, and we'll see you on the next video.